Good morning, everybody. It's Craig here. January 11, one day on from yesterday when I recorded a video 24 hours ago. Every day. I don't know why I'm laughing at that. I think it's just the consistency is great, but it also feels funny announcing the date every day. But I do it to keep myself on track. So it's been a really good morning of writing, and I did well yesterday afternoon as well. So yesterday morning I started on chapter 5. I didn't get a lot of planning done. I had to wrestle with a few consistencies with reality, um, which was perfect in retrospect because even it changes something that I need to now work on in chapter 4. Won't be a major thing. I'll come back and fix it up later, and it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be better than it originally was because I now understand the reality of part 2 a bit better compared to part 1, and it ties in more with what my original thoughts were, that I just forgot when I was doing the outlining of part 4. But now that when I remembered that yesterday morning and I wrote some notes on it, yesterday afternoon I ended up finishing planning the outline act of part of Act 5.1, and it was really cool. I was really happy with it. It just felt like a really good act. The scenes connected well, a lot of good stuff going on. I had this scene in mind for a while, and it came out, at least in outline form, the way that I would like it to. So that was a great feeling to finish the day on. And then I woke up this morning and I didn't really know what I was going to do for Act 5.2. What I originally had as my single sentence outline when I originally did a whole novel view of the plot was not really that. I mean, it wasn't that great, and it certainly doesn't fit with the tone of what I'm now doing with the planning, whereas most of the book has stayed pretty consistent with those single sentence outlines. This just wasn't going to work, so I had nothing in front of me except I knew what I wanted to do for Act 5.3 and 5.4. Those particular acts were still relevant and still needed to do what they had to do to get the book to the point it needs to get to for the final chapter. So I sort of sat down and I had no real idea of what to do, but I just wrote some very cursory ideas about where they were, and particularly at the top of my planning template each day it has the time of day, and when I got a sense of the time of day I got a particular feeling for what it would be like to be there, particularly with the action that had just taken place beforehand. And when I got a sense of the atmosphere, I got a sense of a particular piece of action that could take place. And when I started to expand that action, it completely answered, or more than answered, it explicated a particular consequence of an idea and really drilled into the sense of reality that I was exploring yesterday morning when I worked out that it wasn't quite consistent with what I wanted in terms of what was real and what was possible. So when I came up with this piece of action and it led in that pathway, I thought this is exactly what needed to happen at this point in the book. It explains what's real to one character, it explains what's real for another character, but without that other character having to acknowledge it. It's not done through some sort of God narrative voice. It does it within very plausible, practical narrative within the book, and it just fits. And I was really happy that it came along. And then once I had that, really that was the meat of the act, and then I just had to fade out to a point, and then it sort of dips back up into what will be the start of Act 5.3. So it's really good. I'm really happy with how that's all tracking. I think I mean, I think, I was just thinking about how grateful. I almost turned this into a little productivity boost session, but it's an amazing thing to sit down and to consciously think, I don't know what we're going to do here, and then to start small, and then just the right thing comes along, and you think, how did that get there? And it's exactly what you wanted, and you build it up, and it's all happy, and then you've got something that you never knew that you were going to do. It just sort of it comes along in that fashion. And I know that's just creativity, in a nutshell, but it's not necessarily all creativity. I mean, a lot of what I'm doing in the novel is just so much planning and scaffolding so that it takes some of that improvised chance out of the picture at this stage. And certainly other, times I've talked here about even thin slicing things down, like, we've got a novel, then we've got chapters, then we've got the acts within those chapters, and then I want to thin slice each act into, what did I say the other day, like I want to have the 5 scenes in each act sliced into 3 parts each, so each scene, each like 650 word scene will have 200 little word bits. So I'm in lots of ways taking the chance, or I guess the possibility of a lot of improvisation out of the picture. And I know I've talked, previously about the idea of you don't want to improvise a whole song. You want to improvise 4 bars or 16 bars of the song, and to get the best results. I personally feel, and I think that's what has happened most of the time through the book when I've been planning. I've come up with an idea. I've set myself 16 bars to improvise within. Sometimes that's come really easily because I knew the melody before I started, and sometimes I really didn't have anything except maybe the chords that came beforehand in the previous bar. And then you play and you do whatever you do, mixed metaphors here, but you sometimes you're very lucky and you come up with something that you think that's really cool, that was something that could come out and come into the book in that way. So yeah, very grateful for that. And I'm also, it fills you with optimism. I mean, it does 2 things. I think it can naturally fill you with fear, that you think, gosh, I hope I can pull that up again next time. I know that's always the thing that you think, gee, I did it. I did something that feels good. I hope it is really good, and gosh, I hope I can do it again next time. But the other thing is that it fills you with optimism that you can. I mean, you can. I think why I'm doing those things is to ensure that I can, by following a particular process, to say, I didn't just sit here for 3 hours and then suddenly like an idea clicked. It's much more about, I sat down, I thought about what happened in the previous act, I looked at the time of day, the setting that the story was taking place in, and just started to put down some very rudimentary thoughts and feelings, and then things started to come from there. So it wasn't about picking something very big and amazing out of the air. It was about building steam out of little grains of salt. So yeah, that's a good feeling, happy with where it's at. Act 5.3 tomorrow, and then say 5.4 the day after, if that goes all well. What will that be? Friday, Saturday, and then maybe next week I'll finish planning chapter 6 within the first 4 or 5 days of the week, and then the second round, the first real proper round though, of outline planning, because the first round was single sentences for each act, and now I've got each act fleshed out with the 5 scenes within really fully fleshed out. I'll be in a really, really good position to go back through again, and I don't know what sort of editing I'm going to do at this stage, but I know I want to really clearly visualize every act and run a really strong narrative beam through each of those acts, so that I can make sure the logic is consistent throughout, the relationships and dynamics and action is building in the correct flows as they need to, and I really just need to see it all. I'm using Scrivener, to write, so I'm going to see if I can visualize something within that. Otherwise, I'm just going to get paper and just start to draw some arcs and start to get a feel for the whole book and the way the flow is going there. I'll tidy things up, I'll fix any problems that come up, and I don't know how long I'm going to give myself for that that third round of outlining, and then I guess what a fourth version of that might look like. I imagine certainly as part of, even if I said the third round of outlining was getting the shape, getting those trajectorial flows, or whatever the word might be, to see that all that's mapped in a really readable, engaging, exciting way, that the characters are heading where they need to go at the right times, and it all feels good in that respect. And any internal consistencies are fixed up as well as part of that. That can be my third round of revision, which will be a little bit more macro. And then I think round 4 should be back into the micro, thin slicing those scenes, putting 200-word descriptions of the 3 parts of each scene, so I'm drilling in even deeper. So when it comes time for the prose, it's ready. I know exactly what to put down there, and I won't be blocked in that respect. It'll be just very sound. So I think that'll be the 4th round. I'm thinking now that's probably about 3 weeks worth of work in front of me after I've completed chapter 6 next week, and that would bring me to the middle of February, and I anticipated I'd start writing the prose at the start of March. So that's good timing. That gives me 2 weeks to do a 5th round of outline planning, or think of something that I haven't considered yet, or just work out the next steps at that point before I actually start to put prose to paper. And if I feel ready, if I feel ready, I will start to write a little bit earlier than the 1st of March. So we'll see how we go. Thank you for watching, and I will be back tomorrow morning. So I'll see you then.